basically what we do is we try and get them a better return on their assets. And it's not a boast, but to say, Bob and Carol probably picked up all these investments over the course of the last 15, 20 years. Some of them are quite old, probably carry a lot of charges, maybe a little bit of imbalance in terms of where they're invested, maybe too much in cash, not enough in something else, whatever. But you can find, building sites is a classic example. You can shop around to get a better rate, and it's still these days not impossible to get a better return of 1 or 2% on a building society account than the account most of our clients find themselves in. When I was dealing with some people recently, they thought they were getting a good return on their Barclays ISAs, and they were actually getting 0.1%. And that's low, but it's not unusual. So we expect to get a better return on their assets over the 5 years of time. But more importantly, or just as importantly, we try and make better use of their assets and resources. And that's more about putting money in the right places to make the most of it, not necessarily about getting better returns, which is something slightly different. So we look at their situation, we say, right, on balance, looking at 5 years, with your attitude to risk, then these are the type of things you should be looking at. So what difference would a 2% per annum increase in return make to Bob and Carol? Bear in mind, we're only talking about 5-year period to retirement. The pot was 266,000, it's now 291,000. Not a huge increase, but it hasn't cost Bob and Carol anything in terms of what they're paying into it. That is just by getting them a better investment return over a short period of 5 years. Quite a significant difference. So what are they saving? They're saving £107 a month net in Bob's pension. His employers put in £133 a month gross to 5%. Carol was saving £80 a month net in her pension. They're also saving £150 a month and £75 a month in cash ISAs and stocks and shares ISAs. Well, one thing we could do, that £225 each month that they're saving, we could put that into Bob's pension. We could also put it into Carol's pension. That's a different story. We could put it into Carol's pension, but for the purposes, we'll look at Bob's pension. At the moment, they're getting no tax relief on that £225 a month they're putting away. By putting it into his pension, they're going to get tax relief at least at the basic rate, possibly a higher rate. Bob's a basic rate taxpayer, so each £225 a month he puts into his pension, the government's going to add a certain amount to it in the form of tax relief that brings up to £281 a month. That would boost their retirement pot from £291,000 to £295,000. Not a great deal again, but it's at absolutely no cost. We haven't increased their cost by 1 penny, and yet we've taken their fund from 266 to 295,000 with no increases to them. What else could we do? Look at this list here. We could perhaps use some of those to good effect for their retirement. I just asked about premium. How many people have got premium bonds? Yeah. I did my training about 350 years ago on financial services, and the first sort of year of training, I looked at premium bonds and I could never understand why anybody took them out. And 30 years hasn't done anything to change that. The actual pot, if you like, the payout is 1.5% currently, and that's for somebody with average luck. If you've got worse than average luck, you may get nothing at all. It's highly skewed in favour. The only reason why it's 1.5% is because one lucky individual each month wins £1 million. Very, very skewed. It doesn't make sense from a financial point of view. If Richard Branson went to the government and said, I've dreamt up this scheme, you want to do this, they'd have him up in court if he tried to run anything like premium bonds. The returns you get right just don't stack up to the risk you're taking with it. Now the answer I always get is, well, you're going to win £1 million. Yes, you can win £1 million. The odds of somebody winning £1 million in any 1 month are 40 billion to 1, or just over 40 billion to 1. Any one number coming up is 40 billion to 1. The National Lottery is better than that, it's 14 million to 1. Only 7 people in Hampshire won £1 million since 2000. The last one was in December 2007. And perhaps someone's due now, but nobody won in Hampshire since December 2007. In May this year, May 2010, only 6 people in Hampshire won more than £1,000. You get more in the building society, and everybody rides the building society at the moment. So just think about it. I know I won't persuade anybody to sell them, I know, but just think about it. So we'll leave their premium bonds aside, we'll let them keep hold of those, but what we'll do is we'll look at their shares. The shares are £1,400, create a lot of paperwork for them, not a significant amount of money, certainly not in relation to the amount of paperwork it creates. They've got stocks and shares ISAs worth £12,000. The actual benefit, tax benefit of the stocks and shares ISA these days is pretty marginal to most people. It's not a huge benefit of the stocks and shares ISA. Endowment, well, there's no with profits fund. With profits is a dying concept these days. There's 1 or 2 good companies out there at the moment, but they're gradually moving away from the market. So what we'd say is, well, can we make better use of those the share values, the stocks and shares ISAs and the endowment? And between that, there's £29,400 invested in those assets. These days, you can contribute up to 100% of your earnings into a pension plan. And it doesn't have to come from earnings itself, it can come from savings. So what we could do for Bob is we could take that £29,400 and we could put it into his pension. That's through investment growth, that's through redirection of savings. By putting that money into his pension, we increase it from 295,000 to 305,000 by redirection of assets. That's just using the tax relief that £29,000 will generate and some growth on it over the next 5 years. So he hasn't lost the money itself, it's just gone into his pension, and he's claiming 20% from the government. Thank you very much. And by the way, he's getting gross returns on his money with no tax deducted, whereas on the endowment and the shares, he's getting tax deducted every step of the way. So we've now got to £305,000 through redirection of assets. Again, it hasn't cost them a penny to do this. It's just proper management. £305,000, £15,000 lump sum, so we've got a total of £320,000 cash now. We wanted 50,000 as a capital sum, so we've got 270,000 just to provide income. Now, using 5% rule again, that's income of £13,500 a year. 5% would probably be, given the nature of their portfolio, would probably be net available taxes. So they're talking about £13,500 a year at 5%. We can get 7% growth possibly we could use in the figures. You could say we can get 7% income, but it's not really practical. You'd be a bit more conservative when it comes to retirement. But that's an awful lot closer to the £17,000 a year. And what could they do to make up the difference? Bear in mind, they're only looking at this difference for a period of 3 years till Bob's state pension kicks in. They're short by £3,500 a year. They could take it by selling the premium bonds, which I'd recommend. Tax-free cash from Bob's pension. We haven't talked about tax-free cash from his pension, which we can use. They can take it from their savings deposits. It's only for a short period of time. It's a different mindset. You're starting to release into your capital. Their priorities change. They're retired. They need £17,000 a year from their assets. So they're going to have to start using their assets to generate it. But by doing that, it's achievable. It's suddenly become achievable. What else can we do? There's various other things we can do with that. We only use some of their assets. We could use a lot more of their assets for this plan purpose. Pension contributions. I don't know how many of you heard or come across the term salary sacrifice if you're employed. But salary sacrifice, if you are employed, is a must. It's a very, very tax-efficient way of saving money in an employer's pension scheme, whether it's a final salary scheme or whether it's a personal pension plan. You should ask your employer about making a salary sacrifice for your contributions. It's a tremendous national insurance saving that you can make by doing it that way, which will boost your pension pot.